signed a multitude of executive orders immediately following his inauguration on January 20th. One of the most controversial and my favorite is titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology, Extremism, and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. Can I get an A, f***ing men? I'm Bridget Phetasy, and this is your Dumpster Fire. Welcome to Dumpster Fire, where we make burgers out of your sacred cows. And if your sacred cow was trans women or women, well, sucks to be you. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, this is truly the age of Phetasy. Phetasy is a word I made up in 2000, and it means when reality becomes parody, or when parody becomes reality, irony squared. Either way, it means beyond parody, which has now become the world we live in, and it is truly beyond parody that the pussy-wearing hat crowd has abandoned women, and Mr. Grab 'em by the pussy himself has turned out to be the ultimate defender of women. Do you realize how hilarious that is? I just think back to the grab 'em by the pussy moment in our culture.
Grab 'em by the pussy.
And the Women's March. And how everybody was like, this guy, he hates women. He's put more women in positions of power than pretty much any other president. He also turned out to become the guy who's defending women's spaces. This is the patriarchy so crafty. Patriarchy so crafty, they convince women to turn on women, other women, and let men into women's spaces. And the patriarchy is also so crafty, it takes a man to get this shit done and get these men out of women's spaces. This never should have gone this far. It's actually bonkers that it did, as we've been saying all along. I don't understand that we need a law for this. This law is passed to get men out of women's sports. Now we have an executive order, but the whole thing is so well written and so clear. The writers of this executive order are May Mailman and Stephen Miller, and it is a beautiful thing. The language is so clear. It's crazy because I have been spending probably the past 8 years trying to understand what gender ideology is, get my mind around it, get my mind around how you can confuse gender and sex differences, all of this hodgepodge cacamony. It's so much noise. The average American doesn't know what's going on. And they so clearly laid out in this document all of the things. Section 1, purpose. Across the country, ideologues who deny the biological reality of sex have increasingly used legal and other socially coercive means to permit men to self-identify as women and gain access to intimate single-sex spaces and activities designed for women, from women's domestic abuse shelters to women's workplace showers. This is wrong. Yes. Thank you. Yes, it is wrong. It is very wrong that this is happening. Again, I don't know why we need to say this, but I'm grateful that we are saying it. You have abandoned women, and it's not because we're resentful or mad. It's because we have a right to our own spaces. Accordingly, my administration will defend women's rights and protect freedom of conscience by using clear and accurate language and policies that recognize women are biologically female and men are biologically male.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a big, too long, didn't read document, which you can read, but they are very clear about what sex is. And they say sex shall refer to an individual's immutable biological classification as either male or female. Sex is not a synonym for and does not include the concept of gender identity. And my favorite part, the part that is often the most confusing to people, is where they tear apart gender ideology and showcase what nonsense it is. And they go on to explain gender ideology replaces the biological category of sex with an ever-shifting concept of self-assessed gender identity, permitting the false claim that males can identify as and thus become women and vice versa, and requiring all institutions of society to regard this false claim as true.
That just makes no fucking sense. It's just bullshit.
gender ideology includes the idea that there is a vast spectrum of genders that are disconnected from one sex. Gender ideology is internally inconsistent in that it diminishes sex as an identifiable or useful category, but nevertheless maintains that it is possible for a person to be born in the wrong sexed body.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Gender identity reflects a fully internal and subjective sense of self, disconnected from biological reality and sex, and existing on an infinite continuum that does not provide a meaningful basis for identification and cannot be recognized as a replacement for sex. Again, can I get an amen? But so clear. It so clearly describes this nonsense that everybody's been wrestling with. And it is one of the reasons that Trump won this election. People were tired of this stuff. They were tired of having to walk around on eggshells around a very, 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 very small percentage of the population.
Any words for the challenger, Miss Woman?
Good luck, Heather.
Luck is for dudes.
They were also tired of getting drop-down menus with 50 different things that you could choose for a federal document. You shouldn't be able to self-ID into a women's prison as a man, particularly if you're a predator. You should not be able to self-ID at the last minute when you feel like, oh no, I'm going to be guilty. I better get into the women's prison. You shouldn't be able to go into a domestic abuse shelter if you are a man. You should not be able to just call yourself a female when you're a male on your passport.
How dare you?
And all of these documents that are supposed to be identifications so that we know who people are. We've been talking about this ad nauseum for years on this show. And I'm grateful to see that there is an administration that's willing to stand up and put their foot down and say enough of this nonsense. Because it's gobbledygook. It makes no sense. It's incoherent. And I would say, oh, chalk it up to just adults doing what they want to do, but it's having real harm to adult women and other places where they can't defend themselves, like prisons and domestic abuse shelters and spas. And it's also having real harm on children because, as I've mentioned before, this is used, gender ideology, to justify giving these children irreversible medications, irreversible surgeries that will render them essentially unable to have babies, to have children, and also even enjoy sex at all. They never get told this stuff, by the way. It's not anything that they realize they're consenting to. By the way, they're too young to consent to it. You can't even get a freaking tattoo until you're like 18 years old. So I am very grateful that people are putting a stop to this. I am very excited to see all the lawsuits coming from the detransitioners out there. And I am very grateful for this executive order. I still think there needs to be a way to, executive order is not the way that we can rule. We've got to somehow get this in law.
Right.
But it shouldn't even, it's common freaking sense. I don't even know. It's so crazy to me how it managed to get this far that you need an executive order being like, men are men and women are women.
I know.
What? Clown world. It is truly just 6 years of me on this show screaming women. Women! 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 Women. It's the word. Use it. Also, America was sick of birthing person, chest feeder, uterus haver. Women are like, fuck you. Lesbians are being erased. They can't even have like a dating app that is just for women or a bar where they can go that's just for women.
Her penis, you fucking bigot.
You went too far.
Yeah. And there's going to be a backlash, and these transgender advocates and activists have basically ruined it for actual legitimate transgender people who are a tiny percentage of the population.
And generally just want to go about their day and live their life.
Right.
And they were.
Right.
I mean, you used to need, and I believe in the extended version of this document, they do, outline things like intersex and how those things are treated. These very small outlier situations that everybody loves to use in any of these arguments when they're trying to argue for why men should be allowed in women's prisons. And I think even to be, there was some leniency even leading up to this, where if you had a vaginoplasty, you could be considered a woman. I'm not sure where that stands in this new document, but I think I believe some of this stuff is still pretty open to, they're not trying to like erase trans people.
Right. They're just trying to put a stop to the gender ideology that has crept into all of our institutions.
I wish there was an executive order to take pronouns out of the bio.
I'm Cody. Pronouns em, ers, or zem, zers.
I like that they're there because then I know what to expect.
I know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good warning system for those of us who are normies. Guys, this is a normie position. Again, I speak to you, Democrats, who have learned absolutely nothing. This is a normie position. If you can come back to being somewhat normal and not completely insane, which I have my doubts about, I think you stand a chance at winning some elections, perhaps, given how maybe you can grab some people back depending on how this one rolls. But if you can't, you lost. You're lost for a long time, and you're lost in the wilderness. But I do think if they do pivot back to being normal, there's a real chance they can snatch some people back into the mainstream.
Yep.
You lost the this is mainstream. You lost the mainstream. How did you lose it's crazy I don't think anyone has really recognized how crazy it is that the left completely dominated mainstream culture for as long as I've been alive, and now they've completely lost it in like the span of a decade.
Right. Well, in the span of a couple years.
Yeah, but it's been, we're talking about wave after wave after wave of people being red pilled.
Yeah.
You had the first wave around Trump. They were the early adopters. You had the second wave around Kavanaugh, where a lot of people were like, wait, what? This guy is was a gay. What are you talking about? You had a big wave around Me Too. You've had wave after wave around the gender ideology stuff. You had another wave during COVID and the lockdowns and the riots and then you had more waves during the Biden administration. You had another wave when you lied about Joe Biden not having dementia. You had a big red wave during that. And then it's been like, I feel like it's just kind of wave after wave of people they've lost. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised that they haven't learned anything, because they didn't learn anything from the multitude of waves. How many people have written books of how the left lost me? Or some version of that. I could write a version of that book.
Yeah.
There's millions of people have told you, voted with their feet, voted now with their actual vote, have written books, and still they're like, nope, I don't know. Maybe they won't learn. Don't forget to like, subscribe, touch my bells and buttons, and tell your friends about us. Please help us reach our goal of 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. It will be very exciting to us. You have to stick around the ad to see your favorite part of the show, the weather lady. Those are the rules. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Speaking of standing up for women, XXXY is the only athletic brand that stands up for women's sports and spaces. Not one athletic brand has stood up for girls. Not one. Even as more and more males enter our sports and spaces, but XXXY Athletics has boldly taken a stand. So I gotta ask, why would you buy from other athletic brands that are selling women out? Why don't you spend your money on a brand that shares your values? Like, men shouldn't be in women's sports. XXXY Athletics makes everything from super soft, comfy sweats and fleece to cotton tees and performance wear, including leggings, bike shorts, workout shirts with moisture-wicking fabrics for men and women. And there's tons of new stuff coming in for the spring. Get fit, get brave. It's time to buy brands that align with your values. Go to thetruthfits.com and use the code Dumpster20 for 20% off. That's thetruthfits.com and use the code Dumpster20 for 20% off. The link is in the description below. Speaking of women, then here's a woman that puts us all to shame. Let's check the weather with Yanette Garcia.
Este canal de baja presión está interactuando con todo el aporte de humedad proveniente del Océano Pacífico y del Golfo de México. Como podemos ver, esto es lo que está provocando estas lluvias que se han estado presentando en nuestra ciudad y se van a extender también para el centro.
Just love Yanette.
Oh, Yanette. She's the original.
Oh,
The
Yanette.
favorite. Phetasy News.
If you love Dumpster Fire, the best thing you can do is become a supporter at Phetasy.com. It's the easiest way to support your favorite not a news show. You get the unedited version of this Dumpster Fire, and we leave a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor, and you also get access to everything else we're doing. And it's a lot. And now for some housekeeping. We moved Walk-Ins Welcome off this YouTube channel. So please, everyone run over and go subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. There's a link in the description below to make that easy for you. And thank you to everyone who helps make Dumpster Fire possible. Thank you to our sponsors. We can't do it without you or them. Support the people who support us. And now to cleanse your palate, the internet is glorious.
There's only two gender out here, male and female. If you are gay, just be gay. Don't talk about you're gay. We all know you're gay. Just don't talk about it. If you're a lesbian, you cool. You cool. If you're LGBTQ, whatever, keep it that shit to yourself. There's no gay marriage out here. That's against the law. So keep it that shit to yourself. Don't swing that shit to someone else's daughter or son. All right.
Remember, life is absurd. Don't take yourself so damn seriously. Take the work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. This has been your Dumpster Fire. I'm Bridget Phetasy. Now make me rich! I like to think we had a small part in moving the needle towards women!
Certainly. It was all our screaming on YouTube.
And the unicorns dance while the world burns, world burns.